And now, our feature presentation.
The best
in the world
is right here, right now.
Whether you like it or don't like it, pal, learn to love it.
Ladies and gentlemen,
welcome.
All right, listen up.
Now it's our time to step forward. It's time to bring the NWA back into the spotlight.
I was thinking that it might be a good idea if you and I formed an alliance.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Attention, everyone. Welcome to the greatest wrestling program in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? Stop what you're doing and listen.
It's the Alliance Guys podcast with your hosts Kevin Frazier, DKM, and JCap.
Well. Welcome to the Alliance Guys podcast, a presentation of alliance-wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance and the United Wrestling Network. With me, obviously, there's no DKM. He's on assignment tonight, but of course, our fellow compadre, the former World Junior Heavyweight Champion, the modern-day hero, Kevin Lee Frazier. Kevin, welcome to the show, pal.
Glad to be here, Jay. I'm really excited. Really just to hang out with everybody tonight and talk a little bit of wrestling and just see how everybody's doing.
We already have a full house. I see Terry McDermott's in the house. Willie Bowen's here. We're getting started. It's been a while, right? Like, we haven't been consistently doing this show regularly because Thursday nights have all of a sudden become such a popular night for things to be going on. But we're here, and we'll be back here going forward for the foreseeable future. This is your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. And so that's what we're here to talk about. We're going to talk about Tuesday night's, episode of Power Surge. It's the first episode of Power Surge that we've had in like 2 months. The lead up to the chase, they didn't have any additional Power Surge episodes. So this was the first episode of the Power Surge that we've had in a while. A little bit different format. We didn't have any Mae Valentine on this episode. We didn't see Nick Aldis once on this episode. And it was a very different Power Surge. They introduced our friend of the show, Gary Horn. He's now doing backstage interviews online, I guess. What did you think of the different format, Kevin? And what did you think of the show? Save your opinions for the whole show for later, but what did you think of the different format?
It didn't. I mean, it didn't. It was like it kind of mattered and it didn't matter, kind of thing. Like it didn't. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. You pointed out some things that I didn't even notice, so I found that really interesting. I didn't realize that Mae wasn't in the show, but now that you bring it up, guess what, guys? Mae wasn't in the show. You know how important that isn't to me. So, it is what it is.
The other thing that I thought was interesting about this show is that all three of the matches were taped without a live audience. So these must have been taped on the in between the pay-per-views, whether it be in Power or during the 73rd anniversary. There's no audience, so some of these matches were taped before the actual pay-per-view itself. So it's kind of interesting some of the matches they came up with. But the first match we got up was your favorite wrestler, and that would be Colby Stinkin' Corino taking on Marshe Rockette. Now, this match, I don't really understand the match in and of itself. It didn't seem like there was given a reason for this match to happen. Where in the past, they would call it like a TV title qualifying match or something. There was just nothing behind this except for a basic match, which is not very typical for the NWA.
Right.
And there was no interference. Colby came out. Marshe came out. Marshe, there was no Slice Boogie in his corner. There was no, any resemblance of a teamwork there or anything like that. But the match is basically the story of Marshe Rockette not taking Corino seriously, and Corino being like a little pit bull and just kept attacking like the leg of Marshe Rockette, which I also thought was weird because he won the match by rolling him up and pulling the tights. You would think with all the work that he did on the leg to neutralize him that he would have gotten some sort of submission victory. Kevin, what did you think of this match?
Well, I would say I didn't think a whole lot of it. Actually, not all of it. I didn't really hate the match, like the actual technical aspect of it. I'm not going to say that it was great technically, but I don't think that would stand out to me as the biggest issue. But kind of like what you said, like, why was this match booked? Like, what's the point? When you have the ability, you have creative freedom. It's not like you just have to book things a certain way. And when you have the ability to book certain matches, why wouldn't you book guys that would go good against each other? And I don't think this is a good matchup for either person, because it becomes very difficult in a match like this, unless there's a story behind it, for this match to really have a lot of interest. Because usually if it's big guy versus small guy, you kind of have it's a David versus Goliath kind of thing, because the small guy is lovable and likable. But now you have a smaller heel and against the face. And actually Terry said it was a filler for TV time. That's fine, but why this match with these two guys? It just was it didn't make any sense. A lot of it didn't make sense. These are just kind of matches I don't like. I don't even like matches like this. Like, again, I'm not a big fan of really little guy wrestling really big guy unless there's a story behind it. Why not put these guys against guys a little more in their own caliber? So, yeah, of course, I'm not a big fan of Colby Corino, so it took a lot in me not to fast forward it. I really thought about it, but I didn't. I suffered through it like a champ.
I think James said it, kind of nailed it right there. It seemed like they threw darts at the wall, and sadly, this is what stuck. So we know. Okay, I'm operating under the assumption that the NWA is filming in excess of content, because we never really know for sure when there's going to be like that third or fourth or fifth wave of the pandemic. And there's any moment, things could get shut down, things can change. So I think they've tried to be smart about things and have recorded, like I said, in excess and have lots of extra content. So a match like this, maybe it doesn't make the most amount of sense to air on this episode, but if this was, a year ago, we would have all been happy just to see something from the NWA. With that being said, this match really doesn't do a whole lot for anybody. So Colby gets the victory against essentially a enhancement talent.
They jobbed out Marshe. Yeah, he's a jobber. I mean, especially
he hasn't,
a guy like Colby.
He hasn't won a whole lot of matches either. So it's like a victory for either one of these guys is not really going to do a whole lot for them. I don't know what the storyline is with Colby. I know that he technically has an opportunity to cash in a title shot at some point. So I guess they're going to try to build him up to a degree. But I don't know. This just doesn't feel. This kind of felt like a waste of time. To kind of say what Terry said that was filler. Like, they could have filled this with any match. There could have been I would have rather watched Sal Renaro versus Colby Corino, or Marshe Rockette versus JTG or somebody else, Jordan Clearwater perhaps. Just something that would have served a purpose better than what we got.
No, I agree, Jay. That was kind of what bothered me, I think, about the match, was just that it felt like it was wasting my time, which it's not like this would be a great free YouTube match, but this is not free TV here. This is I'm paying for this, and what the heck are you doing with my money?
And Wrestling with the MMA says, Kevin's disgust for Colby makes me want to see the match.
Look at that. I'm the only reason anybody wants to watch Colby.
And then James H. Jackson says, I feel that's why we got the extra power last season, because they overfilmed just in case. I feel like that's a safe bet. If I was in pro wrestling today, that's what I would be doing, just because you never know.
Right.
And then with all that being said, like, with the limited resources they have to maximize their opportunity to film as much as they can, because under those 4 days, right? After those 4 days are up, the talent goes back and does whatever the talent needs to do. They go back to the home office, start editing these videos. It's just they need to maximize those 4 days. The two
they edit these videos, Jay?
What's that?
They edit these videos, Jay? You really? Whoever is the editor for the National Wrestling Alliance right now, look, I'm not a professional editor, but I'm telling you right now, like, you should hire me instead, because we're going to get to the Jax Dane interview. We're going to get to these interviews too, and it's not live TV, man. Like, you can adjust things, and it's not like you haven't given us a 30-minute show before. So at least give us 30 good minutes. But when some of this stuff just drug on, I'm like, oh my God, please kill me now.
Well, you said something that kind of resonates with me too. It's that we pay for this program. It's not a whole lot, but we do pay $4.99 for the privilege of watching NWA Power 4 days a week. And that's great. That's awesome. I love it. But you know what? I find it a little bit insulting that if I'm paying for this, you're also going to show me commercials. Like, I feel like... Right.
That's what you're supposed to pay not to have commercials. Ask YouTube.
Well, I feel like if this show was on YouTube and I had to pay, or excuse me, if I was watching it on YouTube and I didn't have to pay for my content, then I can understand by force feeding me commercials. But you would think that the $5 should absolve me of those sins. I shouldn't have to watch commercials. I'm paying to watch this. It just didn't.
Hey.
They did that at the pay-per-view as well, and that just didn't sit well with me. I'm like, why are we doing this?
Well, and actually, I want to bring up what James just said. I think it's mainly because he agrees with me, and DK's not here to disagree. But on top of that, he said with the killer pay-per-views they had, which we gave the pay-per-views good reviews, right? I mean, for the whole, we gave the pay-per-view pretty good reviews. We have some first-time buyers. You want this season to keep them hooked and not turn them away. Man, I've been saying this, Jay, since we've been covering the show. Like, you can't waste your time. And no offense, I mean, maybe offense to Colby Corino, because I don't care. But Marshe Rockette's a pretty big dude. And some of the talent they threw out on the show in the ring, it's like that. You have to, every week you're competing with other wrestling companies. You don't live in a vacuum. And so you want to put your best foot forward out there all the time. Once you've established yourself to a point of like mega loyal viewers, then you can do stuff like that. But the reality, the reality is right now is like, you're really trying to get more people on board. And it's just an assumption. I feel like they're making assumptions that people are just going to put up with this crap. And the truth is I'm not going to lie to you, Jay. Like, there have been a few times, more than a few times, where I said, I'm only doing this show right now because of Jay and DK and the crew in the chat, not because I'm really enjoying what the NWA is putting out, and because it feels like they get lazy. When in reality, that's when they should grab the bull by the horns and take the momentum and drive take that chance to really drive it up. And this kind of just goes right in the face of that. So I'm trying. I said to myself, I'm not going to harp on the show too much, but I am going to be honest.
Well, I mean, and again, that's what separates us from the rest of the pack. We're going to give you the straight, honest opinion, what we thought. And I'm with you, Kevin. Like, if we weren't doing this podcast, if this wasn't so important to us. I don't know if I'd keep subscribing. I absolutely hate Fight TV as a pay-per-view provider. I hate the service. I hate the customer service. I hate the quality of the product. I am not a big fan of Fight TV at all. I'm also with the NWA. Like we'll get 2 or 3 episodes a month that are just phenomenal, and then the rest are kind of lackluster. And so, we're hedging our bets that the 2 episodes or 1 episode a month that we get, that's going to be so good, it's going to be worth that $5. And again, it's not about the money. Like the $5, like that's not the deal breaker. It's not that I'm hard up for cash. It's that I'm investing so much time into a product that sometimes I don't feel like it's the best product that's out there.
Well, and the reality of this is we're paying more to do this podcast than we are for the NWA. So there you go, guys. But the truth is like we could save $5 a month and put it towards this podcast and talk about something else if we really wanted to, because and I'm not saying we should. Don't take it that way. But I'm also saying it wouldn't hurt my feelings. And again, I think the really part that bothers me right now is that they had so much momentum after the pay-per-views, and it really feels like they're squandering that. But there's one thing I'm excited about right now in the NWA. One reason I'm tuning in to watch, maybe 2 when you talk about Pope, and that's Jax Dane.
Oh, we're getting there.
To me, Jax Dane, and I know I'm kind of segueing a little bit here, but Jax Dane to me, since the turn with Crimson, been the best part of the show for me so far. And I know they're building towards the Jax Dane and Murdoch, but for God's sakes, let's get Jax Dane and Pope. Forget the title. Let's just get the best 2 most entertaining guys in a feud together, and maybe throw Trevor in there. So that's where I'm at with it. I'd tune in for that.
And we'll get into more in a bit about who is setting their sights on who. We do know that on October the 24th in Kentucky, as part of the promotion with Tried and True Pro Wrestling, we're going to get Jax Dane versus Crimson in a steel cage match. So that's something that I'm kind of excited about. Notice how there's the emphasis is on the feud more so than the title. And I think that's an important observation to make, because that's telling you how much they're buying into Jax Dane right now and how much they're buying into Crimson right now, that they're going to go ahead and put a featured event with those 2 in a steel cage. And it very reminiscent of the old Shawn Michaels and Kevin Nash Diesel feud, good friends, better enemies. I'm very much looking forward to seeing our pal Jax Dane in a match with Crimson, and them taking off the gloves, and it not being the Jax Dane that we've seen on Power in the last couple of seasons, not the Crimson that we've seen on Power the last couple of seasons, but the true grit, the true athletes of these 2 stepping into the ring. And to make the icing on the cake, you've got Jax Dane, who's taking it to the next level. We said this a couple weeks ago, and I'll say it again. We've got more character development out of Jax Dane after the pay-per-view and the few matches of Power than they've given him the entire first 4 seasons of Power.
Jax Dane has the most character development of anything of anything. Like, it's the really only development in many, to some extent, besides Nick Aldis. It's really the only real development that we've had since the pay-per-view, and I'm happy with it.
Well, and he gets out there, right? And he's not going to let anybody forget his credentials. He's not going to let anyone just gloss over his acclaim. I mean, the man is a former national NWA champion, a former NWA North American champion. In fact, he unified those belts. People tend to forget he unified those titles. He was also a World Tag Team Champion, and we can't forget that he defeated Hiroshi Tenzan to win the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship. And he pointed out, man, he never even lost those unified titles. He was injured, and he had to relinquish the belts, but nobody ever beat him for those titles. And so we've talked about this at length on this podcast and on the pre-party about how the pedigree that Jax Dane has. and his accomplishments that he's done in the ring, and how they get overshadowed so often by this Lightning One era of the NWA. And finally, he said no. Finally, he's had enough, and he's going to say, damn it, you're going to hear how good I am because you're not paying me the proper respects. And Jax Dane is telling you right now, he is not one to be trifled with. Kevin, What are your thoughts, brother?
Well, are we kind of going upon Jax's interview, or are we gonna just talk about just Jax in general? Because I can talk about both. Okay, well, first things first. As far as Jax Dane goes, you and I were part of the NWA making a transition from one leadership to another a while back, and I was actually like right in the middle of it. And most people would think because I was from Texas that I was one of the Texas group's guys. But to be honest, I was actually one of the guys that was being pushed by the Marquez Trobich group. And then when the Tharp Ronquillo group took over, there were promises made to me that weren't kept. And instead, Ricky Morton and his 53-year-old self ended up getting what was promised to me. Irrelevantly about that, I just feel like Jax Dane might be getting that same kind of treatment, but it doesn't seem like he's putting up with it. And the facts are that his interviews the last couple of times, and now let's segue that into his interview with Gary Horn. I thought Jax Dane probably had one of the best takes in this interview of, well, Trevor Murdoch called me out specifically, and I'm like, did he? And in my mind, I'm thinking that he goes, well, he said I'm ready to take on the biggest in the battle. I was like, oh yeah, you got me with that one. That was great. I thought that was great. I thought the interview was good. I don't know. I don't have a lot of exposure to Gary Horn, but he was more of a bus driver than like May, where she'll ask these kind of convoluted questions that like dig under the skin of the person she's asking. I felt like these were a lot softer questions, and he was more just driving the bus. I like where I like the more intricate questioning. I enjoyed that in the past. Now, the one criticism I have for this is it went way too long. I feel like it should have been cut 10 minutes shorter. Get on there, get to the point. After it goes too long, it's just both of them kind of sat there. It looked dumb after a while. Both of these little promos that they did went way too long. Or did they do 2 or 3? Whatever. Well, no, because Joe Galley had the one with Kamille. But I felt like it just went too long. Other than that, for me, it was the highlight of the thing. And when he said that, I was just like, man, like that's like the line so far of power, like ever. Like that's the best promo like ever. Was when he said, well, he called me out specifically, and I'm like, and in my mind, I'm going, I don't remember him calling Jax Dane out. And he pulls like a typical like wrestler thing, and he says, he said he's ready, wants to fight the biggest and the baddest. He goes, he's got to be talking about me, and he said it with a straight face. He said it like he really meant it, and I laughed pretty hard at that. I really loved that. Those are the kind of moments that I think myself and all of us love about pro wrestling. I'm going to jump into the chat for a second, Jay, to see these guys are going nuts on the chat right now.
Well, yeah, we're having fun in the chat. You guys, if you're watching us, feel free to jump into the chat. If we like your comment, we'll put it up on the screen. Did change things up a little bit differently. The podcast, we're using different software. So if it looks a little bit different, that's because it is. But hopefully you still enjoy the overall presentation. We're still talking NWA. We're still talking NWA Power. And, of course, we're talking about Jax Dane. I'm not done talking about it because, like Kevin said, that interview was the highlight of the night. I thought he killed it. He crushed it. He's not a guy that's gotten a lot of FaceTime and promos in the NWA, even going back to when he was champion. He was a man of very few words as champion, so you didn't really hear Jax get too many promos in. So when he was there, and he was, with Gary Horn. Gary is going to throw up the softball questions because that's what he's there for. And I love Gary Horn. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to make it very easy for Jax, and that's what it was. It worked out very well. So I do tip my hat to my good pal, Gary. If he's watching this, probably doesn't though, but if he's watching it, I say kudos to you because I think you did the job well. Like you said, Kevin, I think it did go a little bit too long. But I know why it went too long because they were trying to this was a filler episode, like Terry said earlier. Nothing in the show was super relevant except for that promo, and it kind of indicated to the audience that not only is Jax Dane well aware of Crimson, and it definitely, you notice how he didn't call Crimson out, like didn't call him weak, didn't call him like a punk. He played him up. He told him how good he is. So when he beats him, it's going to be even more meaningful.
That's great. That's a great observation.
And when Jax was talking about Trevor again, he wasn't calling Trevor a punk. He wasn't calling him out that way. He was saying, yeah, he's the world champion. And, to be in the NWA, you have to be one of the best, and I'm one of the best. So right. I really felt like Jax did a great job. Gary did a pretty good job too. And so that was one of the highlights of the night for me. And that brings us to the next interview.
Well, before you go to the next one, I just want to say one quick thing. The true sign of a good veteran wrestler in the promo is especially a heel, because it's really easy as a heel to do this, but it's to give credit to everybody before you tear them down. Always do that, because you don't want to tear down. You don't want to tear down a nobody. You don't want to fight and beat a nobody. And so yet again, I feel like the way he's towing the line of doing it right, but also staying a heel, I mean, he's doing great. Anyways, carry on. We're going to the next part of the show.
Real quick, James H. Jackson says they could always fill it with quality matches. That would be a good option too.
Well, and I want to actually piggyback on that, because James said something in the chat earlier. He said, AEW is giving out these shows for free, and they're putting these really dynamite matches. And I think that is something to be realized, is that, look, you are not living in a vacuum in NWA. You are competing for dollars, you're competing for views, and if you want people to watch your show, you have to put your best foot forward every single time. You can't intentionally book a bad show and then put it on and then make us pay for it. I just think that's craziness. I just think it's nuts. I mean, there was some talent on this show, but I know that they weren't booked properly. And I know the NWA had plenty of people talent-wise in there that were there for this because of when it was taped, that they could have just done so much better than what they put out here. Why, like he said, if you're going to do a filler match, you're going to put a crappy filler match. Anyway, carry on, Jay. I think we got a match to talk about.
No, not yet. We did get one match, we get one promo, and then we go back to another promo, which is Joe Galli and Kamille.
Oh, boy.
Now, one thing that's a hallmark of NWA Power is this Joe Galli, Kamille dynamic where, are they friends? Are they enemies? Are they frenemies? I don't really know, and I guess I really don't care. But he always tries to hold Kamille, he being Galli, tries to hold Kamille up to a higher standard. And even though she hangs out with the miscreants and Strictly Business, the ruffians, he expects her to have a higher accountability, which I just think is kind of a weird dichotomy. She's a heel. Nothing about her says babyface at all. And he's surprised that she went and punched Melina up on the side of the head. Of course. And Camille's reaction is, look, she had it coming. She won't keep her mouth shut. She can't keep my name out of her mouth. So she definitely had it coming for me to knock her outside her head. Or as my mom used to say, box her ears. So it was, it looks like they're building towards a Melina versus Kamille feud, maybe up to a pay-per-view match, which I'm okay with. The women's division, although there are a lot of bright spots to it, I don't think you're ready to have that Kamille versus Lady Frost match I don't think we need Genocide versus Kamille Part 2 just yet. And I don't think Kylie Rae is ready to step up as the number one contender for the Women's World Championship. So I feel like it makes sense putting Melina in that role and letting Melina have one more hurrah, so to speak. But ultimately, this is it seems like that's what they're playing to. Kevin, what did you think about this promo?
I don't like the Joe Galli Kamille thing. And in all reality, I believe Joe Galli called some of my matches in Hollywood, and I may be wrong. He may not have been there when I was there, but I know that
he wasn't there when you were there.
Yeah, but I know he's a guy. It was Todd. Anyways, Todd was fantastic. I can't remember his last name right now, but no,
Todd Kenley.
Todd Kenley. Yeah, he was really good. No, so I don't want to smash on Joe Galli. It just kind of goes back to the booking. Joe Galli's really very one-dimensional. And so when you try to add dynamic to someone like that, they get exposed. Kind of like Tyrus trying to do a moonsault. And it's Joe Galli should just call matches from ringside. He doesn't do well in this stuff. It seems so fabricated. It seems so fake. And it doesn't come across as genuine. And the relationship with Kamille is awkward, like Austin Idol's awkward when he's out there with another female. So that was supposed to be a joke. Maybe it wasn't that funny, but it was. But I don't like it, and I like what you said about does he live in he looks like the idiot. He looks like he lives in a fantasy world or something, and it's they could put Kamille in so much better spots to look better than going out there and doing this. I don't know. I just not a big fan. There you go. Didn't like
Terry points out that Joe is more of a journalist than a wrestling announcer. And I like Joe Galli, and I like him in the role. I like when he calls matches. I don't know, maybe I'd prefer Kyle to be doing these backstage interviews, or even maybe Gary Horn, and having each person play that role that they are best suited to play. I think Galli calling matches is great. I think Galli interviewing Kamille, I think that's worn a little thin. And I just see some more comments that I want to get to in the chat real quick. What would Luthez do? Says, what's with all the empty ballroom matches? Now, we're only assuming this, Lou. This is just an assumption, but with the limited amount of time that they had to tape on the 2 days following the pay-per-view, I believe they recorded an entire catalog of matches because they weren't exactly sure when they'd be taping more content again. So I think whenever they had an opportunity, the ring was set up, they got the cameramen out there, the commentators out there, and we're recording just because time is precious. And backstage segments can be done online, like we saw with Gary and Jax, and later Gary with Trevor. But the actual in-ring matches, you do need to have a ring set up and commentators. So I think that's why we got that. And then James H. Jackson says, what is Kyle's purpose? We see him less and less. And I think you're seeing Kyle less and less just because they're still trying to work out the dynamic of these live tapings. And again, this isn't the Georgia Public Broadcasting Studio where they have another room set up for backstage interviews and stuff like that. This was basically they're in the ballroom and they're making the best of the space that they have. So with all that being said, I think that's where we're at on that. And then that brings us to the next match, which I know you're a huge fan of, Kevin, and that would be the women's triple threat match. They brought out again the hometown favorite, Tottie Lynn Ramsey. Of course, it's kind of pointless to bring out the hometown hero when there's nobody from the hometown in the audience to watch her, as they also had Sky Blue and Thunder Kitty. Now, Sky Blue is obviously the person that is getting the spotlight treatment, if you will. They definitely see something in her, and she's getting these matches that, I wouldn't say that Tottie Lynn or Thunder Kitty are going to dominate the talk of pro wrestling, but I think Sky Blue is in these matches to get her more seasoning, to get her more camera time, because I think they see some potential in Sky Blue. The matchup mostly focused on Thunder Kitty being the aggressor, and then Sky Blue wins the match, and then the second time tonight with a roll-up. So I know that it's part of the gimmick that she's supposed to be the 100-year-old wrestler, but the way that the announcers were selling it, it felt very hokey to me. And I know that's part of Thunder Kitty's gimmick, is she is hokey, but it just felt a little over the top. Kevin, what were your thoughts? Good and bad. Bad.
So Thunder Kitty shouldn't be on television at all. She should be at Hood Slam, or it's Brian Kendrick's wrestling show out there. She should be wrestling. She should be wrestling Serial Man or Sub-Zero from Mortal Kombat. Like, she should not be on a mainstream competitive pro wrestling show, on their television show, especially not pay-per-view. And now that's twice pay-per-view. So again, and I see somebody throwing out there, I love Thunder Kitty. Yeah, I mean, I love Serial Man, but I don't think we should have him, wrestling in a serious match against serious championship contenders. Tottie Lynn, I felt like maybe giving her that one little spot on the Battle Royal thing was good, but I think I've seen way too much of her. She's really not there. She's very, very green, like almost painfully cringy green to me. And so it was, to me, there were times I'm watching Sky Blue's body language and going, she's thinking what I'm thinking. Like, why the hell am I out here doing this? Like, what in the world? Is this a joke? Because it really looked like a joke. And, for a young wrestler like that to have to carry a match to some extent like that, she should be wrestling Melina, or, like, there were veterans in that locker room. Like, put her out there in a one-on-one match against somebody she can learn from, and she can grow and build her in a match that actually benefits her and the person she's wrestling. So, it's like Thunder Kitty is unique. There's a lot of things that are unique in the world that they shouldn't be on TV getting paid for. I have a really unique, like, little, like, toe at the very, like my little toe on my right foot is really unique, but it doesn't mean it needs a TV show. Just because you're unique does not mean you're good or entertaining, and I don't think she's either. And sorry, Luthez or whatever. I expect more from a Luthez guy. But no. I mean, in reality, like they really could have done Sky Blue better than this, because again, she is an up and coming wrestler. You can tell she takes it seriously. And again, I think Tottie Lynn is serious, but she's just not there. And I mean, Thunder Kitty is not taking it seriously because her gimmick's not even serious. I just, again, it was just another match that did absolutely nothing for me. I mean, it was great to get to see some of Sky Blue's stuff, but it's like, again, her body language is just like, what the hell am I doing right now? Like, this is embarrassing. So, anyway, James Jackson agrees with me. I knew she would.
Our audience is definitely split, and I know why people like Thunder Kitty, and it's tchotchke, it's fun, it's silly, and I'm not saying you're wrong for liking Thunder Kitty, but I feel like this match should have been, you have an opportunity to kind of, you're trying to hook people in, like Kevin said earlier. They're coming off the height of this pay-per-view and of these last two pay-per-views, and people are excited. And like, I think it would have been well better suited to have, you know, maybe Sky Blue go out there and wrestle Kiera Hogan that they had that a few episodes earlier, or wrestle a Chelsea Green and put her in the ring with somebody who's really experienced and really good, and then see what they're capable of doing. And I think if they did that, I feel like you're benefiting not only your audience by giving them a much better match, but then the talent involved is getting a better match too. If you're gonna put Thunder Kitty in the ring, put Thunder Kitty in the ring with somebody who she could get better from facing. Somebody like a Melina, somebody again like a Chelsea.
No, like put her in the ring with Danny Deals. Terry McDermott says she's a lot. Yeah, put him out there for 2 minutes. Let somebody come out and squash him. Like what's the Judas guy? Let Judas come out there and give him a double choke slam and then walk off. Then everybody is over and they don't suck. Isn't that great? Like, this is, I should be booking this show. Judas, don't tell me that wouldn't have been the segment of the show.
I mean, I think I would have popped. All right, so that brings us to the next interview. And if it feels like we're flying through this show, I mean, part of it is because there's no DKM here, and part of it is because this was a short show. Like, the content was easily digestible, but there's not a whole lot that has to go into it. You know, the interview with Gary Horn and Jax Dane, it was a lot of fun. Jax Dane got himself over. Gary did a good job. Cool. The match itself, so far the matches have just been, I pay $5 a month and I want better than this. But that brings us to the next interview with Gary Horn and Trevor Murdoch. Now this is Trevor, it's kind of weird because there certainly is a formula in Mr. William Patrick Corgan's head about how you use your world's heavyweight champion. And apparently it means getting them on TV as much as possible and putting them in every segment so that they're on the show all the time. Because we just had a Trevor Murdoch at the podium a few weeks ago. We had Trevor with Nick Aldis at the podium, and now we get Trevor Murdoch and Gary Horn. So it's like we're getting a lot of Trevor Murdoch. We don't necessarily need to have Trevor Murdoch on every single episode of Power. And that's my complaint for everybody. Like, no wrestler should be on every single episode unless they're defending their title on every single episode. In lesser words, Trevor said that he humbled Nick Aldis. I mean, that's kind of what he said. He didn't come out and say that, but he more or less said that. And that now he knows that he's got the target on his back that Aldis had for all of the 1,044 days. And he kind of makes reference to the Pope as a potential challenger. Now, the Pope still has his opportunity to challenge for winning the Champion Series. So does Jax Dane. He also has that gift certificate for a title match. And then also he brought up Adonis, and I kind of like that the NWA went back in time on this one because Aldis referenced this, that Chris Adonis at any point could have challenged Aldis for the title because he was the national champion, and that's your privilege as the national champion, is that you're technically the number one contender for the 10 pounds of gold. So even Murdoch kind of addressed that and said, hey, look, Adonis could cash in his opportunity anytime he wants for a title shot at me. So Murdoch kind of explained how he has that target on his back and he doesn't take it lightly. I thought it was a pretty good interview. What'd you think, Kevin?
By this point, I was a little bit checked out. I mean, I vaguely remember it. I wish that I don't know if this interview and the Jax Dane interview were filmed independently of each other, but would have been nice to see like an actual response to Jax Dane from Trevor Murdoch, because I think that would have been entertaining. I mean, because I think how Trevor responded to him calling out Jax Dane, that actually would have been kind of funny, because you think he probably would have laughed just like we did about it. And then it adds a little bit of credibility and a little bit of like story to those promos. So it really just kind of, I mean, it was all right, but I think this is something that that I knew from the get-go that, Trevor Murdoch's not going to be a very interesting world champion. It's just not the kind of character he is. So I think I don't think he has the capacity to be as dynamic as Nick. And so I think it's better actually for them if they take the less is more approach with him, because what's going to happen is we're going to get sick of seeing him and hearing the same thing, the same old chick. I think this is a great time to actually build up his challengers so that matches against him are a lot more interesting, because I think where his real strong suit is in the ring. And so I don't think he has quite the same ability outside of the ring in terms of promos and that sort of thing. I'm not saying he's bad at promos at all. I'm just saying, that you're just talking about a whole different animal with Nick. Nick is a much more cerebral character, like cerebral wrestler in general, but also too, like, he gets a kick out of, changing the goalposts with his character and making you think, is he a good guy, is he a bad guy? That actually keeps the promos interesting. I don't think they're going to do that with Murdoch, and nor should they really. And so it's like, how many times can you hear, "Oh, I'm gonna beat you up, and I'm a good old country boy"? Like, after a while you get, okay, if you're the same crap over and over again. So again, I just think a little bit less is more kind of situation with Murdoch. Doesn't mean I don't think he's gonna be a good champion. I just think that they need to, they don't, kind of like what you said, I think they need to take a different approach with him than they did with Aldis.
Now, if you're paying attention to what's going on in the chat, James brought up a good point. I just want to share that real quick. He says, I wish they could have something similar to AEW Dark on YouTube, where they can get ring time and still be seen by people and save the A-level stars for Power. 100%. And I don't want to get too much into AEW, but just real quick, I mean, we saw, or if you watched it last night, then you might have saw just how phenomenal the crowd was, and how exhilarating it was to see Bryan Danielson, the American Dragon, one of the greatest wrestlers in our lifetime, stand in the ring across from Kenny Omega, who at one point was the Impact World Champion. He still holds the AAA championship, the Mega Championship. He's the AEW World Champion. And the crowd was so into that match. By all means, they should be. These are two of the most popular wrestlers in the world and have a huge pedigree. But what I want to say to that is, AEW understands that not every episode is going to have those guys on that, in that match. Not every episode is going to have all the top tier talent, but they just did a whole set of studio tapings in Orlando, Florida for AEW Dark, a show that doesn't even appear on television. It's a show that's directed just for YouTube. And it's a studio environment, not unlike what we used to have with NWA Power. And they're doing basically their own version of NWA Power with lesser known names or people that they're trying to get over on their roster. And I guess what the point I'm trying to make is NWA Power has not even close to the resources that AEW has, but they have an opportunity to do something similar when they're shooting all of these matches. These matches should be on a B show. These matches should not be paid for. I shouldn't have to pay to watch Tootie Lynn Ramsey versus Sky Blue versus Thunder Kitty. And that I'm not taking a shot at any of those women. I'm just saying that's not a marquee matchup that I should have to pay for. If the NWA is making money by touring or doing these big pay-per-view events, if the NWA is making money off their pay-per-views, if the NWA is making money off their merchandise, if the NWA is making money with commercials, then matches like this shouldn't be occupying what I'm paying for. And right. I'm just being completely real here. If I'm paying for it, I want quality.
I agree. And something interesting. You sit here and say, we're talking about on one show they got Bryan Danielson and Kenny Omega, And NWA's answer to that is Tottie Lynn or Thunder Kitty and Sky Blue, Colby Corino versus Marshe Rockette. You know, that's their answer to that. And hey, newsflash, NWA, like, and I know they're talking about, one of the guys said in the chat, well, you know, Thunder Kitty, I just don't take it too seriously. Right. You can't. And we're talking about a product that, are we not supposed to take the product seriously? Are we just supposed to consider this like a comedy wrestling league? Like, or are we supposed to take take it like a serious wrestling promotion? If we're supposed to take it seriously, then I think that they need to really realize like the landscape that they're on and understand the competition, understand the time that they're in. What we would call at my job a little self-awareness, and realize like, hey, we've got to be able to compete at least on some level and be relevant. And I think they're hurting that opportunity because television time is precious by just rolling out whatever out there. And I just wonder, you know, is Fight TV going to keep paying them for this kind of product?
Well, I mean, there's two ways to look at this too, right? Because it's Fight TV, but it's like, are we as consumers, are we going to continue to pay for this? You know, if the NWA put a match on with Jordan Clearwater versus the Pope, is that going to stand toe to toe with what AEW is doing? Absolutely not. But it could be a good match, and it could still be like, okay, here's my alternative to AEW. I'm getting some good old-fashioned wrestling from a guy who knows what he's doing, a good up-and-comer who is going to get that rub at some point. You know, there's a better solution than what we got. Anyway, we still have one more match, and I do say I want to get to some more of what you guys are saying. Terry McDermott says, saying she's
before we move on, I think
a little too much.
Yeah, I wanted to say.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. My signal might be messed up over here. Am I freezing up or anything on your end, Jay?
A little bit, but you're okay. You're good.
Okay. Feels a little delayed for me. But yeah, like James H. Jackson makes a great point. Like there's a lot of guys on this roster that are good. They're really good. And you know, like a simple adjustment in this main event, put Latimer out there against Mims. You know, give Latimer the match that Mims is having against the guy like Mims. I mean, there's just a lot of different things they could have done to get more out of their roster than they're getting. And I just don't get it, because we're going to get to this main event and it's going to be really hard for me to be positive, to find anything really positive about this main event. Not because there's anything wrong with Mims. I know Mims is all right. I mean, I know a lot of people like him, but being likable and then being taken seriously as a contender or being a top TV talent are two different things. So I just think we're looking at this is your main event for a paid TV show, and what in the world? What in the world are you rolling out there? Like, what kind of main event is this? This wouldn't be a main event on an indie show. I mean, and if it was, then it wouldn't be that big. That wouldn't be that good of an indie show. No offense to Mims or Blk Jeeze, but Jeez, Blk Jeeze.
All right, so all kidding aside, getting to the match. This match was essentially like an enhancement match, a squash match, if you will. Jeeze got in some offense early on, but this was Mims' match, you know. And I understand that they want to put Mims over, but again, who's he beating? Beating Blk Jeeze doesn't get him over. Put him over Slice Boogie. Put him over Jordan Clearwater. Put him over Tom Latimer. That's when I know you're serious about getting this guy over. Putting him in a match with Blk Jeeze doesn't do much for Mims. It's the same thing I said when Colby beat Marshe. It doesn't do a whole lot. It doesn't move the needle. This show is devoid of any superstar that the NWA has. Outside of the interviews with Jax Dane, the interviews with Trevor Murdoch, and the interview with Kamille, this episode was devoid of anything that makes NWA Power special. And again, you're paying for this. And, does it bother anyone else that Chris Masters has only defended that national title once, and it was on a pay-per-view? He hasn't defended the title on TV yet. Tyrus has had very few defenses as TV champion. The women's champion, they're working on that. I get it. They're working on the tag team champions. I get that. The men's tag team champions are in Mexico waiting for this dang tournament to be over. And it just feels like, again, we were on this such a high with such a great pay-per-view. Instead of going off of the momentum that they built, now we're back to, trying to reinvent the wheel. And you don't have to do that. You don't have to take everything 3 steps back. You can keep it ramped up and ramp it up a little bit more for the pay-per-view, and then ramp it just a little bit down for the TV show. This isn't what happened. At least it wasn't a roll-up for Mims. He did hit his finisher for the victory for the 1-2-3. But all in all, this isn't what I pay for. This isn't why I'm a fan of the NWA. This is actually one of the reasons why it's hard to convince people to give the NWA a chance.
Right. And like a lot of my friends that are in wrestling that I talk to them off a lot, all the time, and a lot of them, that helps me gauge where the NWA is, because that tells me like what do the wrestlers in the industry think about NWA right now, and it in a way they don't really take it as that too seriously. And I think that's because the NWA is not really taking itself serious enough. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like that kid that thinks he's cooler than he really is. I just think the NWA probably. I just think the NWA thinks they're like that. They're like those people that are like snobby and nobody cares. Like you're only really like a true snob if people actually want to be like you and actually want to, if you're actually. So again, I just think they think they're bigger than they are, because if they think they can just roll out matches or roll out these kinds of shows and that they're just going to retain fans like that, I'm sorry, but if the bigger product, if the larger marketed products take urgency for every TV show that they have to some extent, I think that this company should think the same way, and again, I just think the world of entertainment is different now than it was NWA during the 50s or whatever glory day they're trying, whatever booking psychology that I can tell they're using that's kind of an old school psychology. Hey, I can respect it, but it doesn't make it relevant. And I like what you threw up there. It's when you're playing in a pre-AEW world. Right, you might as well burn it, but in reality, even pre-AEW, you're still competing with the largest wrestling promotion in the history of the world. And, for better or worse, if you want to compete, you got to actually compete. So, this was not the best foot forward. And go ahead.
Terry added that Billy is in another world, not your typical NWA blue collar promoter. That's true, but we can't keep making excuses for him though either. And I'm going to tell you this: everything good about the NWA is all Billy Corgan, and everything bad about the NWA is all Billy Corgan. Because he's the main decision maker. He's not just the matchmaker. He's not just the booker. He's not just the promoter. He's everything. So if you love what you're seeing, it's all Billy. If you hate what you're seeing, it's all Billy. And then DKM just added, if you're not one of the big boys, then you have to put out a better product to be noticed and followed. And DKM, if he was here, we'd both be agreeing with him. I mean, you look at what MLW is doing. You look at what Ring of Honor is doing, okay? These are both promotions who aren't, multi-billionaires who are financing the shows, right? Like, it's not AEW, but Ring of Honor has this very solid product and a very strong following. and that pure championship was such a huge deal for them. And Ring of Honor is in a good place to just crown their new women's champion. They're in a great place. MLW, they're going in with Hammerstone versus help me out. What's his name? Kevin did freeze. Okay. Well, then while Kevin's frozen, I'll just talk to myself for a second. And, these guys are, sorry, I'm getting distracted here. There is an opportunity for these guys to get to where they need to be. My camera battery is low, as you guys can tell. Jacob Fatu, thank you guys. And they're in a place where they're doing well. They're getting TV deals. So it'll be interesting to see how this continues to go for the NWA. Look, even United Wrestling Network, you don't have to love Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. You don't have to love Championship Wrestling from Memphis. But look what they're doing in Georgia, in Atlanta. They're bringing in some top guys. Tony Nese. They brought in The Awakening. They're bringing in guys who have some pretty big shoes to fill. And the NWA has the same opportunities as anyone else, and they have to start maximizing them. This show was a below average show. Doesn't mean that all will be below average, but this one was. Overall, this isn't what's going to get people to watch the NWA, period. But I think that's going to do it because Kevin can't get back on. Oh, wait, no, there's Kevin. Hey, Kevin.
Sorry, guys. I don't know. I pay for ultra high speed internet, and it isn't so ultra sometimes or high speed. But I'm back. What I miss? Not much.
We're talking about the show. Not much.
We're talking about that show. I didn't miss a whole lot. No, I mean, and again, we're gonna be back next. We'll be back next week, and I just hope the NWA can do a little better. Spend my money a little better this time than they, this upcoming week. And I really think you just got to do better with your TV show. And now that you guys have talked about it, I'm going to have to go watch my boy Brian Danielson. I didn't even know he was on TV. So that's kind of exciting.
So that's going to do it for us. Thanks again for tuning in to the Alliance Blog Podcast, a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. We genuinely appreciate your support. Would you consider subscribing so you won't miss any future episodes? We'd also like to remind you that we do a live stream every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific on YouTube at the Alliance Blog. And you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, TikTok, and Twitch at the Alliance Blog. Remember, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, add what is essentially your own. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.